Late Night Health continues. Regular guest on our show. It's been a while. Dr. Ken Redcross. We're going to be talking with him about stroke awareness. And Dr. Redcross practices in just outside of New York City, though secretly he has a Southern California phone number. Isn't that interesting? Anyway. Dr. Redcross, welcome back to Late Night Health.
Thank you guys for having me here. I always love being on the show with you guys.
Well, thank you very much. We love having you. We're going to talk about stroke awareness. Your practice is primarily what has been called concierge medicine?
Yes, exactly. But my training is here in New York as an internist, internal medicine. So I'm able to see a little bit of everything, and strokes have become a bigger part, unfortunately, here in the United States.
Should we be afraid of strokes?
Well, look, you guys know me. I'm always positive no matter what. So I wouldn't say necessarily afraid, but let's be aware of them. And so that's why it was so important to come on with you today to talk about how can we really be stroke savvy, to be aware and think of some of those things out there that can really make a big difference in our lives as far as stroke awareness and health.
You know, everybody, I think, gets dizzy. Has trouble swallowing, may feel, after eating an ice cream cone, you get that frozen headachy thing, the brain freeze. These can also be attributed to potential strokes, can't they?
Well, some of the symptoms appear that they can kind of cross over to one another. But don't forget, when we're talking about these things, there's a myriad of other symptoms that actually take place. Look, we are aware that strokes are the fifth leading cause of death. So I'm here to tell you, at least as far as the death from stroke is actually improving, but it's the disability, Mark, which makes me the most nervous because it's one of the leading causes of disability. And over 800,000 people each and every year have stroke. So it is a topic that's worth discussing, I should say, rather. But the other thing that's important is that there's another 11 million people who don't even know they have strokes. These are called silent strokes. But the good news is 80% of strokes are actually preventable, and there are some lesser-known ways that we can talk about to help prevent and recover from some of these silent strokes in particular.
A few weeks ago, we interviewed a couple, the wife. Her husband had a stroke 29 years ago. Mm-hmm. And she was told to let him go home and die. And
no.
Today he drives. He doesn't speak. I can't remember the technical term for that. He can't read either.
Right.
But he does the laundry, takes care of the household. He drives. He does the grocery shopping. She's always looking for different things for him to do. From physical therapy to alternative health. And she refused a lot of allopathic things 29 years ago.
Right. Well, I'm glad that she went with her heart and she went with her gut on that, because now there are some things that we can do. Some of the things that we're talking about today, such as awareness like blood pressure. We know that blood pressure is one of the leading causes of strokes. 1 in 6 adults don't have an idea what their blood pressure is even running. But if you do have hypertension, you're 6 times more likely to potentially have a stroke. So you can just start right there, Mark, and start saying, look, we need to start making sure we monitor our blood pressures. We can leverage technology nowadays. We have these wireless blood pressure monitors that allow us to check our blood pressure even at home. And some of these even sync up to send them over to your doctor's office to actually have your doctor look at some of these results. So there are some things that we could do that 29 years ago you never would have thought would have been possible.
So then an Apple Watch is something that I really need. You have to write me a prescription so I can show it to my wife.
Oh, my God. That's good luck with that. She's the real boss. She'll probably rip up my prescription.
She would. There's no question. But actually, that should be something that could be prescribed. The insurance company should pay for it.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. And even if it's an Apple Watch or even some of these wireless blood pressure monitors that I mentioned, that would be wonderful. The other thing that was interesting about your story you just mentioned, Mark, is that I love the fact that people are looking for alternative ways. Now, as you know, I'm an allopathic physician. That's the way I was trained, Mark, but I've kind of seen the light, and I've seen there's a lot of other things and remedies that are out there that are beneficial, and I love learning about them. Now, the research shows that if we have our stroke, our brain can repair and recover on its own, but you got to make sure that you get help quickly. You know, there's even a chemical that our body makes naturally in our brains or in our body. It's called acetylcholine. And I like to bring up acetylcholine because it does two important things. It helps with brain energy metabolism, so that means the energy that the brain needs, Mark, to actually work throughout the day. The other thing that acetylcholine does is it helps to decrease any brain tissue damage should there be an injury, like a stroke, for instance. Now, acetylcholine has been used over in Europe for several years. In fact, it was originally developed in Japan, but over in Europe now, they use it to help support dementia, for Parkinson's disease, and also for stroke. Now, one of the better ways to get the benefit here in the United States of acetylcholine is actually with a medical food called Saranex. Now, I mentioned Saranex in particular because it had a specific form of acetylcholine that was shown to be beneficial not only for the prevention of stroke, but also for the recovery of damaged brain tissue.
Is that is that a prescription or an over-the-counter?
Well, that is an even better question because you know what? Over in Europe, acetylcholine in particular is a prescription. Now, Saranex that we have here in the United States is that form of acetylcholine, the one that I'm talking about that has a lot of human clinical trials. It is not a prescription here, but it is available, for instance, at their website, which is Saranex.com, and you can do all the research. And the reason why that's important,
how do you spell Saranex?
It is Cerenx. And the reason why I mention this one in particular, Mark, is because you'll see so much in the news now because everything is about brain health. The baby boomers are getting older. Everyone wants something to help improve cognition or keep their memory. So there's a lot out on the market, but Saranex actually has over 100 human clinical trials. And that's important when we start putting things into our bodies, everyone. We have to have data. We need data that proves a benefit before we put this into our bodies. So that's why it's exciting to talk about some of these lesser-known ways that we didn't have, for instance, 29 years ago.
And this will help prevent stroke and also at the same time, if you have one, help the body repair itself?
Yeah, it can help with recovery of damaged brain tissue. That's why the studies are so huge to actually see. If you go on their website, the data's all there. That's another thing I like when patients go there and look at the site. They actually look at the information. They can call me back or send me information. And it's nice to have kind of an educated discussion back and forth because this is the pure medicine science part that, you know, we always knew about acetylcholine and its benefits, but until it was actually brought here to the United States and to be able to use clinically, that's a really big deal. It really and truly is, just as our diet is too.
And what about exercise as a prevention of stroke?
Now, exercise is important for a couple of things. Now, we already know about cardiac health, but it's also good for brain health. And so I say no matter how old you are never too old to start an exercise regimen. I don't even care if you're 88. The point is we get out there, we walk a little bit, we get our heart rate up, but that's good for your heart and for your brain. So exercise is definitely a key component.
It's also good for your soul.
Oh, it is. And when you talk about the soul, Mark, you know I'll talk all day about the soul. So I'll try not to take over the show on that, but when you're talking about exercise, all of this, all of our health, it's all about our soul. It's about our sense of well-being, and that's what these things actually provide when you're making sure your blood pressure is making sure that it's optimal. You're making sure that you're learning about some of the things we're talking about with Saranex. And then the other thing, think about food. You know, there is actually kind of a stroke reduction menu, I like to call it. It includes such things as garlic. I don't know if you've heard already, Mark, but garlic is pretty good for our blood pressure.
It's also very good for our taste.
Yeah, it is. Oh, gosh, I'm a big garlic fan as well. And so you're right. And now this is regular consumption. Now, this is not a substitute for an antihypertensive or blood pressure pill if you really need it or if you're on several. But the point is all of these are about support. So with garlic, maybe some weight management, decreased sodium. You'd be surprised if you can get off of a couple of medications if that's the case.
Let's talk about what about sodium?
Yeah,
I've read studies that say that sodium, does not necessarily affect blood pressure.
Oh, gosh. Well, it kind of depends. There's a lot of studies back and forth to your point. Now, for instance, those who are of African-American background tend to be a little more salt sensitive. Now, obviously, not every African-American patient, but the point is you see it a little bit more.
Right.
So everybody is a little different in how salt affects us. But I'll tell you this. We know that there are some numbers that we should try to stay under, just to make sure. If you're not salt sensitive, that's great. But if not, even if you have a lot of salt, you're still going to have a lot of fluid loss and some other things. So you want to stay hydrated and want to be careful with your salt.
And so water would also be another way of drinking a lot of water, staying hydrated, would seem to me to be another way of preventing stroke.
Well, I'll tell you this. It may not be a direct causal link, but it is important to make sure that you are staying hydrated, especially if you're exercising. So you're right. And coffee comes in as well. Coffee sometimes gets a bad rap, but in this case, 1 cup a day was shown to actually decrease your risk of stroke, as was green tea. But green tea took 4 cups, Mark, but they think that it may help with inflammation. So when you're talking about water and those things, I kind of lump that into making sure that we're keeping inflammation down in our body and making sure that our blood sugars are being regulated properly.
You mentioned at the top of our talk together that there are silent strokes, and we only have a few minutes left. How do I know that I've had one, or don't I?
Well, that's the challenge, Mark. That's the challenge. Usually you don't have any symptoms of this stroke. You come to your doctor's office, maybe you have some sort of imaging study to look at the brain, and then you realize that's negative, but you say, oh, my gosh, I've had a couple of strokes and didn't know, and we report that to the patient. So that's why making sure that these things, blood pressure, we talked about Serenex, we talked about a couple of things for food, garlic, coffee, olive oil, sweet potatoes. All those are important to make sure that we're putting these into our diet, because you're right. Sometimes you do not know that you're actually having a stroke. And last but not least, make sure that you're getting 7 hours of sleep. Greater than 10 hours, Mark, was actually associated with an increased risk of stroke. So we want to make sure that we're getting up and out of the bed, too.
That moving around. But come on. I'm not asking Dr. Redcross. I'm going to ask Ken. When was the last time you got a full 7 hours of sleep? You're a doctor.
Oh, I know. It's funny. You see, I had to pause because I'm doing the math here. I'm doing the math. Well, look, I'll tell you this. I do a pretty decent job, even for my schedule and with the travel, because sleep is like medicine. It really is. Sleep is about healing, and our body heals just like that CPU unit in your computer. When you shut that computer down and you restart it, the computer tends to work a lot better than it did before sometimes. So I try to think that way.
I was calculating. I went to bed at 11:30. I was up at 5:30 this morning. So that's 6 hours.
Bad.
Not bad.
Yeah, not bad. Not bad. Something to shoot for.
Right. It did work. Dr. Redcross, thank you very much for joining us. You have a website, do you not?
I do. My website is drredcross.com. That's Dr. Redcross. My Facebook is Ken Redcross, MD. And my Twitter is at Dr. Redcross. By all means, feel free to reach out. I love meeting new people, answering questions, or what have you, whatever I can do to help.
And we'll also, by the way, have an article and this interview up on our website very shortly, featuring Dr. Redcross. We will talk soon, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Mark. You take care. Everyone have a blessed day, and stay stroke savvy with everything that we've talked about today.
You got it. Serenex would be number one. All right, coming up next, Robert Clancy, and we'll be talking with him about getting stuck in your life, getting out of that rut. Don't go away. More coming up on Late Night Health. Late Night Health is proud of our partnership with the EBC, the Evolutionary Business Council. Check them out at ebcouncil.com.
Welcome to Guide to the Soul. This is Robert Clancy. Balance in life isn't about making everything equal. It's about sharing equal parts of your heart for each area of your life. Many people seem to struggle with bringing their life into balance. Family, work, and health all seem to be a challenge these days. Think of the demands you have on your own schedule and time. It can be frustrating and overwhelming. What's most important to discover is that peace is not about finding a quiet place among the chaos. Peace is about listening for the divine whispers of love amidst this turmoil. Take a breath and you will find balance.
For more inspiration from Robert Clancy, visit guidetothesoul.com or go to the Moments with Robert page on latenighthealth.com.
If you or someone you love suffers from drug addiction, now is the time to utilize your private health insurance PPO plan. If eligible, receive up to $30,000 or more in substance abuse benefits with low or no out-of-pocket cost. We are the National Treatment Network, the premier drug and alcohol treatment referral service operating 24/7. We help connect you with facilities nationwide that accepts PPO private health insurance for substance abuse. If you have PPO substance abuse coverage and you need immediate admittance to a medical detox or residential rehab treatment center, call us now. Call our live referral helpline today. The call is free. This program is not available to Medicare or Medicaid customers.
Call 800-296-1252. 800-296-1252. 800-296-1252. That's 800-296-1252.